Hello, friends. You're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. I never thought a simple late-night job at Burger King would twist my life into something I still can't fully explain. I was 19, broke, tired, and desperate enough to take any job that didn't involve my parents lecturing me every morning. So when the Burger King on Maple Street put up a bold red sign that read, "Hiring night shift," I didn't think twice. Nights were quiet, fewer customers, easy money. At least that's what I believed. The manager, a short, round man named Clark, hired me instantly. "You'll do fine," he said, after glancing at my half-filled resume. "Just clean, serve any late customers, and lock the place at 3 a.m. That's it." I should have known something was off when he handed me the uniform and added, "And whatever you do, don't open the back freezer after 2 a.m. I laughed. I thought he was joking, or maybe it was some store policy about temperature checks. He didn't laugh back. My first shift started on a Friday night, under a sky so cloudy it hid the moon. The parking lot was empty except for a single old sedan parked near the drive-thru. Its windows were tinted pitch black. I couldn't see a single thing inside, and for a moment I felt someone was watching me, but I shook it off and walked inside. Burger King after midnight felt like a different world, one where time slowed, the humming of machines filled the silence, and the fluorescent lights flickered like they were struggling to stay alive. But it was still better than dealing with customers during the day. At least that's what I thought. The first hour passed quietly. I cleaned the tables, changed the trash bags, restocked cups around 1 a.m. The night air outside looked thick and still, like the world was holding its breath. Then the headset beeped. "Welcome to Burger King," I said. "What can I?" A low, raspy whisper interrupted me. "Do you still have the King Special?" We didn't have anything called a King Special. Not on the menu, not in training, nowhere. "Sorry, sir, what's that?" The man chuckled, a slow, dragging sound like air escaping a grave. "The special you make after midnight." I felt a cold prickle crawl up my spine. "Sir, we don't serve any special items after midnight." Silence. Then, "Check the freezer, back freezer, you'll see." A sharp click ended the audio. I froze. The back freezer, the one Clark told me not to open. I went to the drive-thru window and pulled it open slightly. The parking lot looked empty. The weird sedan was gone. Not a single car in sight. The headset beeped again. "I'm waiting." I slammed the window shut. I knew I shouldn't look, I knew it. But curiosity, in all its stupidity, pushed me toward the back freezer. The walk felt longer than usual, like the hallways stretched the more I moved through it. The buzzing lights above dimmed, one by one, as if trying to push me back. When I reached the freezer door, a gust of cold air seeped from underneath, colder than normal, much colder. I grabbed the handle and, before I could think, I pulled it open. The smell hit me first, metallic, rotting, wet. The shelves weren't stocked with patties or frozen fries. They were empty, except for one thing. A large white container sitting in the middle of the floor, no label, no barcode, just a thick frost covering the lid. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid, and something inside moved. I screamed and stumbled backward. The container tipped, spilling a slushy red liquid across the floor. Something pale floated inside, something that looked frighteningly like a human hand. I didn't look twice. I ran out and slammed the freezer door shut. My heart hammered so loud it felt like the whole restaurant could hear it. The headset beeped again. "Did you find it?" I tore the headset off and threw it across the floor. By morning, I convinced myself it was a prank, maybe a leftover prop, maybe someone left it as a joke. I didn't tell Clark. I wasn't ready for that conversation, but I came back the next night. Oh, stupid, I know. But I needed the job. Clark met me at the counter. "You look tired," he said. "First nights can be rough." I wanted to ask him about the freezer, about the hand, about the King Special, but something in his eyes warned me not to. "Tonight," he continued, Don't look at the cameras after 2:15 a.m. What kind of rule was that? I laughed nervously. Why? Just don't, trust me. He left before I could say another word. The hours passed quietly again. 1 a.m., 1:30, 2, no creepy whispers, no strange cars, no freezer nightmares. At 2:15 a.m., I remembered Clark's warning, don't look at the cameras, which meant obviously, I went straight to the security office. The monitor displayed all angles of the restaurant: lobby, kitchen, hallway, storage, freezer. Everything looked normal, until it didn't. The lobby camera flickered, glitching between static and imagery. When it stabilized, a tall figure stood directly under the menu board. Not moving, not breathing, just standing. I blinked. The figure vanished. The hallway camera flickered next. The same figure stood there too. Closer, its head tilted unnaturally far back, as if broken static hit again. I switched to the freezer camera. The container from last night was back in the center of the floor, but the lid was off. The inside was empty. Something had crawled out. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, unable to move. And then the figure appeared again, this time standing inches from the camera lens, its face pressed against the glass. Its skin looked swollen, waterlogged, like it had been submerged for days. Frozen droplets clung to its eyelashes. Its eyes were pale white, bulging, staring directly into the camera as if it knew I was watching. I shoved myself away from the monitor. The lights in the hallway went out. The air turned freezing. Then I heard it, a dragging sound, slow, heavy, wet, moving across the tiles, coming toward the office. I locked the door and held my breath. The dragging stopped. A soft whisper came from the other side of the door. The King Special is ready. I covered my ears. Something scraped down the door, leaving a frost trail behind. Then silence. I stayed locked inside until sunrise. When I finally forced myself out, the entire restaurant looked normal. No frost, no footprints, nothing out of place. Except one thing, a white container sitting on the counter empty, waiting. I confronted Clark that afternoon. What the hell is going on here? He didn't look surprised. If anything, he looked relieved. You saw him, didn't you? My throat dried. Who? Clark pulled out a chair. I wasn't supposed to tell you. Corporate doesn't want new employees knowing. He rubbed his temples. Decades ago, long before you were born, the Burger King here wasn't the only business on this land. There used to be a meatpacking factory one night. The freezer malfunctioned. A worker, Daniel Reeves, got trapped inside. They didn't find him until the next morning. I swallowed hard. He froze to death? Worse, Clark's voice trembled. His body was preserved, perfectly. They moved the factory, demolished it, and built this restaurant over it. But Daniel never left. Every night around 2 a.m., he gets restless. And every few nights, he wants someone to serve. Serve what? Clark looked me dead in the eyes. The King Special. Someone's flesh. My stomach twisted. No, this is insane. I know, he sighed. But if we don't leave something in the freezer for him before 2 a.m., he comes out looking for it himself. My knees weakened. So that's why you told me not to open the freezer? Yes. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because if you knew, you'd quit. Everyone does. He leaned closer. But we need someone on the night shift. Someone he hasn't seen before. I backed away. I'm done. I quit. Clark didn't argue. He didn't try to stop me. He just nodded with a sad, tired look. Then he said something that chilled my blood more than anything that happened before. You can quit the job, but you can't quit the restaurant, not after he's seen you. I left anyway. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps dragging across tile. Every cold breeze against my neck felt like someone breathing down it. I stayed awake until sunrise. I didn't go to work. I didn't answer Clark's calls. I didn't go near Maple Street at all. But I still smelled frost. It clung to my clothes, my blankets, my bed. On the third night after I quit, at exactly 2:03 a.m., my phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number. Your order is ready. Please pick it up from the freezer. I dropped my phone. 2 minutes later, someone knocked on my front door. Slow, Heavy, wet, thud, thud, thud. I didn't breathe, didn't move, didn't blink. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown. Number: if you won't come to the freezer will come to you. I wanted to run, I wanted to scream, but fear held me down like chains. My bedroom door creaked. The temperature dropped so fast my breath fogged instantly. A thin layer of frost formed across my floor. And then, the dragging sound started again, coming closer and closer and closer. I hid under my blanket as footsteps approached my bed. A cold, wet hand pressed against my ankle. I felt frozen air creep into my bones, and a whisper slithered into my ear. The King Special needs fresh meat. 3 months later, the Maple Street Burger King hired another night shift employee, a new kid. Maybe 17, smiling, innocent, unaware. Manager Clark shook his hand. "Welcome," he said warmly. "You'll do fine here." Then he added, "Just one rule. Don't open the back freezer after 2 a.m. At the back of the store, deep inside the freezer, something pale and frozen pressed its face against the tiny square window. Waiting, watching, hungry. Story 2, I never thought working at a Burger King would change the way I look at windows at night. Not doors, not alleys, windows. Because when something stares at you through a window long enough, you start to feel it even years later, behind the glass of your own home. My name is Riley Carter, and the summer I turned 20, nothing in my life was going according to plan. I'd planned to start my second year at the Community College of Vermont with a decent savings account, a reliable car, and maybe enough money left to rent a small apartment near campus. Instead, May came with a reality check. My dad got sick, hospital bills. My older sister lost her job, more bills. My car died, biggest bill. And suddenly college felt like a luxury. Rent felt like a miracle. Food felt optional. So that June, desperate and exhausted, I walked into the Burger King off Ethan Allen Highway. The most depressing building in Burlington. A fading sign, a broken drive-through speaker, a parking lot covered in potholes deeper than my bank account. I needed money, and this place needed someone who wouldn't quit after 2 weeks. When I walked in, the first person I saw was a guy leaning against the counter, chewing on a plastic coffee stirrer. He had messy dark hair, a scruffy jaw, and a face that looked permanently tired. His name tag said Dylan. He looked up, smiled lazily, and said, "Let me guess, interview." "Application, actually," once I said. He grinned. "That's what I meant. Tracy loves desperate people. You'll be hired in 5 seconds." "Wow," I muttered. "You guys always this optimistic?" He winked. "Nope, just honest." He wasn't wrong. Tracy, the manager, interviewed me by asking, "Can you start tomorrow?" Then handed me a uniform 3 sizes too big. That was it. No warning, no training, just, "Welcome to Burger King." And 2 weeks later, my life nearly ended in that same building. I grew up in South Burlington, a small rental home with peeling paint and windows that froze shut every winter. My dad drove delivery trucks for a local warehouse. My mom worked part-time at a dry cleaner's. We weren't poor enough to be noticed, but we weren't stable enough to relax. When my dad hurt his back last year, everything fell on my mom. Then on me. I worked part-time in a bookstore during school, but it closed down, so Burger King became my only option. I didn't want to spend the summer smelling like grease. I didn't want to spend nights wiping ketchup off tables. I didn't want to deal with drunk customers who demanded extra pickles at 1 a.m. But life doesn't care what you want. And by July, with classes approaching, I needed every dollar. So I stuck with the evening shifts, 4 p.m. to midnight, the ones nobody else wanted. That's how I got close to Dylan, and how I got trapped there that night. Most nights were slow. People stopping by after work, parents with cranky kids, teenagers messing with the soda machine, truckers ordering double whoppers. But the thing that made nights strange weren't the customers. It was the back window, a rectangular window on the kitchen side, facing the alley behind the restaurant. It had no blinds, no tint, just clear glass and darkness. And because the light inside was bright and the alley outside was pitch black, it always looked like someone was watching. On my 7th night shift, I caught myself staring into it, waiting for movement. That's when Dylan walked up beside me and said quietly, "Don't look too long. You'll freak yourself out." "You do too?" I asked. He didn't answer for a moment. Then softly, "Everyone does." I laughed nervously. "Why? Ghost stories?" He didn't laugh back. "Just weird stuff happens out there, especially after midnight." "What kind of weird stuff?" He tapped the window with his knuckle. "People standing there, not moving, just watching." "Homeless?" "No," he whispered. "They're not homeless." That gave me chills. But before I could ask more, Tracy yelled from the office, "Dylan, the mop water is still sitting here. Get it done." He sighed. "Welcome to hell," he muttered, and the moment passed. Over the next month, I learned things about Dylan that made him feel human, not just a tired night shift guy. He had a daughter he barely saw. He lived in a basement apartment. He wanted to quit, but couldn't. He laughed easily, but his eyes never matched the laugh. He remembered my favorite drink after one shift. He remembered my birthday. He remembered tiny things I didn't think I said out loud. He listened, sometimes too closely. One slow night, he leaned against the counter beside me and said, "You're one of the good ones, Riley. Smart, kind. You're gonna make it out of this place." "Hope so," I smiled. He looked at me, something sad in his expression. "Just stay careful on nights, okay?" "Careful of what?" I teased. "The drive-through raccoons?" He didn't smile. "Just be careful," he repeated. A week before everything went wrong, something happened that still feels like a warning I ignored. It was 12:10 a.m. I was wiping down tables while Dylan emptied the fryers. Tracy had left at 10. The entire place was quiet. Then, 3 soft knocks on the back door. Not loud, not panicked, just deliberate. I froze. "Dylan?" I whispered. He looked up sharply. "Where?" "The back door." His face changed instantly. Not fear, not shock, just this resigned dread. He walked toward the back hallway and motioned with his hand. "Stay here." "But, Riley, stay here." He disappeared into the darkness. I stood there, heart racing, hearing faint voices I couldn't make out. When he returned, his jaw was clenched. "What was that?" I asked. "Just someone asking for directions." "At midnight?" He avoided my eyes. "We're closed. Forget it." But I couldn't forget the way the voices sounded. Calm, male, and too familiar with him. It was a Friday. Fridays were always bad drunks, teenagers, late-night orders. But that Friday was quiet, too quiet. Rain slapped the windows nonstop. The storm didn't let up. Tracy left early, complaining about a migraine. So it was just me and Dylan. Again. I was cleaning the front counters when he called my name. "Riley," he said softly, "come here." I turned and saw the dining area dark except for one booth lit by the dim orange glow of a battery candle. 2 trays, 2 paper placemats, 2 cups with cola, a takeout bag from the Italian place across the street. My stomach tightened. "What is this?" He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "You've been stressed. Figured you deserve something nice." "Dylan, why didn't you ask me first?" He shrugged. Wanted it to be a surprise. It wasn't sweet, it was strange, and it felt wrong. "Sit," he said softly. "I don't think... Just sit, please." His voice had an edge, not anger, but something urgent. I hesitated, but I sat. The candle flickered, the storm rumbled, lightning flashed. I took a sip of the cola. It tasted off. "Soda's weird today," I said. "Really?" he asked too quickly. "I must have mixed the syrups wrong." "Yeah, maybe." But my fingers tingled slightly. My head felt foggy. I put the cup down. "Dylan, and what's in this?" He swallowed. "Riley, calm down." "No," I whispered. "What did you put in my drink?" Before he could answer, a noise from the kitchen, a footstep, slow, wet. I turned. 2 men stood near the freezer door, one bald, one wearing a hooded jacket. both watching me. My heart jumped into my throat. "Dylan," I whispered. "Who are they?" He closed his eyes for a moment. "Riley, listen." "What did you do?" He reached toward me. "Don't panic." I shoved myself out of the booth. My vision wobbled. My legs felt heavy. One of the men stepped forward. "Grab her!" I screamed. "No!" I ran toward the front door, but it was locked. I banged on the glass. "Help! Somebody!" The rain drowned my voice. Behind me, footsteps. I grabbed my car keys and pressed the panic button. The alarm exploded outside. The men froze. "Turn it off!" one shouted. I screamed louder, and in the distance, sirens. Dylan cursed. "Shit! Go! Go!" The men bolted toward the back exit. Dylan looked at me with something painful in his expression, then followed them. I collapsed on the floor, shaking, gasping, barely conscious. When the police arrived minutes later, I was curled up beside the counter, unable to speak. Hospital, statements, detectives. Turns out Dylan wasn't Dylan. His real name was Daniel Crossman. He had a record: kidnapping, coercion, drug distribution, assault. Charges that slipped through cracks, dismissed or buried. Those two men were connected to him. Every employee before me who quit night shifts, none quit voluntarily. Police said I was lucky. They said I escaped just in time. They said it could have been worse, but trauma doesn't listen to police. For months I woke up screaming. Windows terrified me. Alleyways made me shake. Fast food restaurants made me nauseous. I couldn't walk past a BK without feeling watched. I transferred to day shifts at a local diner. Moved back home, went to therapy. Life slowly rebuilt itself. But scars don't disappear. They just change shape. I'm 28 now, a graphic designer in Montpellier, engaged, happy for the most part. But sometimes late at night, when I'm driving home, I pass that same Burger King off Ethan Allen Highway. It's remodeled now, bright, clean, new staff, new paint. But the window in the back, still the same. And sometimes, just for a second, when lightning flashes across the sky, I swear I see a silhouette standing behind that glass tall, still, head tilted, watching. I blink, and it's gone. But as I drive away, the storm pouring down, the smell of oil heavy in the air, I hear his voice again, the last thing he ever said to me that night. "You look peaceful when you can't fight anymore." The words echo in my skull and I drive faster, always faster, until the restaurant disappears in my rearview mirror, until the window is just a memory, until I can breathe again. Story 3, I never imagined I'd end up working the late shift at a Wendy's off a forgotten highway in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Not after the life I used to have, or thought I had. 2 years before everything collapsed, I was living in a bright 2-bedroom apartment on the Chicago Riverwalk, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that made every night feel like a movie. My dad was a regional director for a logistics corporation, the type who wore tailored suits and kept 2 different briefcases, one for work and one for show. My mom ran an interior design studio, tiny but elegant, mostly for the social circles it kept her connected to. I was studying communications at a private college in Milwaukee, not because I loved it, but because my parents said it was a practical major for someone like you. Life felt arranged smooth, controlled, and then it didn't. When Dad's company got hit in a federal audit, something about improper bookkeeping and falsified vendor contracts. He didn't just lose his job, he lost his reputation. Overnight, we went from being the family with a balcony overlooking the river to the family that quietly disappeared. Mom sold off her studio and half her furniture to cover legal fees. Dad stopped shaving. I dropped out mid-semester when Mom called me crying, telling me they couldn't pay tuition anymore. We moved into a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of Scranton, a gray sagging duplex with thin walls and heating that rattled like bones. Dad was sorting things out, which meant sitting at the kitchen table all day, staring at a spreadsheet he never touched. Mom worked a cash register at a pharmacy. Meanwhile, I spent my days walking strip malls, handing out resumes that practically admitted I had no real work experience. That's how I ended up at the Wendy's on Front Street, the one wedged between an abandoned bowling alley and a pawn shop whose neon sign flickered like it had a heartbeat. My first shift was on a Thursday night in March, the kind where a cold drizzle sticks to everything, including your nerves. I walked in wearing thrift store black slacks and a red polo that smelled faintly of attic. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like they were irritated to be on. The manager, Mark Collins, looked up from a stack of laminated training sheets. He was in his late 30s with thinning blonde hair and eyes that were permanently half tired, half suspicious. "You the new kid? Jordan, right?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Mark tossed me a visor and nodded toward the line. "Welcome to the circus. Try not to cry until after closing." He meant it as a joke, but it landed a little too close. The crew didn't look up at first. Eventually, a girl turned around. Tall, sharp cheekbones, black hair in a messy bun, a nose ring catching the light. "I'm Kayla," she said. "Heard you're the college kid." "I was," I muttered. Next to her was Tommy, the night cook, a broad guy in his late 20s with grease stains on his apron and a laugh that came out more like a cough. He raised a spatula in greeting. The first few weeks were hell. I moved too slow, asked too many questions, and once spilled an entire container of chili down my front. But gradually I learned. I picked up the rhythm, the rushes, the lulls, the way customers spoke differently at 1 a.m. than they did at 5 p.m., as if the night made them more honest or more unhinged by mid-August. I wasn't good, but I wasn't awful. And sometimes when Kayla cracked a joke, or Tommy launched into one of his bizarre conspiracy theories, I even felt normal. Like being here wasn't proof I had failed, but proof I was learning how to rebuild. But then there was that night. It was late October, chilly, dry air, the kind that makes the metal handles on the doors feel colder than they should. I was on the closing shift with Mark, Kayla, and Tommy. The dinner rush had ended around 10:45 p.m., leaving the place echoing with fryer hiss and the soft hum of the ice machine. At exactly 11:23 p.m., the front door chimed. I glanced up from wiping the counter. A man walked in. Older, maybe late 50s, tall but gaunt, wearing a faded forest green parka zipped up to his neck, even though the restaurant was warm. His beard was patchy and gray, and his skin had that pale, almost damp look of someone who spent too much time indoors. But it was his eyes that caught me, wide, unblinking, like he was listening to something inside his head instead of the world around him. He stepped up to the counter. "Good evening," I said, forcing a smile. "What can I get for you?" He stared at the menu board for a solid 15 seconds, lips twitching slightly before speaking. "4 junior bacon cheeseburgers." "All right." I punched it in. "Would you like them as a no cheese?" he said, voice flat. "Okay, no cheese. And anything to drink?" "No bacon." I hesitated. "So, just 4 plain burgers?" He shook his head once. "No bread," he said, "just the patties." "Okay," I said carefully. "We can do that. Do you want them cooked a little less, or—" He interrupted again. "Not cooked, at all." I stared. "I'm sorry," I said, hoping I'd misheard. "You want them raw?" His lips curled upward in a smile so slow it felt deliberate. "You've worked here long enough to know what raw means." I swallowed. "We can't serve raw meat. It's against—" "Jordan," Mark said behind me. I hadn't noticed him approach. "I'll handle this." He stepped beside me, jaw tight. "Sir, we can't serve uncooked patties," Mark said evenly. "State regulations?" The man slid his hand into his coat. Mark tensed. I did too. But instead of a weapon, the man pulled out a wallet, old leather cracked at the edges, and withdrew a thick stack of cash. He peeled off several crisp hundreds and laid them on the counter like he was setting down something holy. "Give me the patties," he said, "as they are." Kayla, who had been sweeping by the soda station, froze mid-motion. Tommy stopped wiping the grill. The restaurant had never felt so quiet. Mark didn't speak for a long time. He just stared at the money, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed. "Jordan," he said, voice low, "take your break now." "Mark, go." I didn't argue. I stepped into the back hallway, but I didn't leave. I stood near the prep window and watched through the narrow gap. Mark glanced up at the security camera. Then he reached into the cooler, pulled out 4 raw patties, wrapped them in wax paper, and handed them to the man in a small Wendy's bag. The man nodded, turned silently, and walked out. Mark disappeared into his office. He came back a minute later and pressed 4 folded bills into my hand. "Forget it," he said. "I don't want this," I whispered, trying to hand it back. "Then burn it. Just don't talk about what you saw." That should have been the end. But when I walked past the side exit, something made me look out the window. The man's car, an old green rust-spotted SUV, sat parked under a dead streetlight, engine off. No movement. Something in me, curiosity, fear, stupidity, I don't know, pushed me. I walked outside. The air was sharp and cold. I hugged my arms around myself and leaned by the dumpster enclosure as if I were just escaping the fryer heat for a moment. His car window was rolled slightly down inside. He unwrapped the burgers. I watched him lift a raw patty, red and slick, and press it to his face. He inhaled, slow and trembling, like he was savoring a memory. Then he murmured something, low, rhythmic, like a chant with no real words. My skin prickled. He froze. Even from several yards away, I saw the exact moment he sensed me. His head snapped up. His eyes locked directly onto mine through the side mirror, pupils dilating like a predator's. He slammed his hands on the wheel. The engine erupted to life. I stumbled backward as the SUV peeled out, tires screeching against asphalt, fishtailing before shooting onto the road and disappearing into the dark. I stood there shaking, the night swallowing the sound of his engine. A minute passed before I could breathe right. When I walked back inside, Kayla stared at me. "What the hell happened?" she whispered. "Nothing," I lied, my voice barely steady. Mark didn't look at me. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man pressing the meat to his face, whispering into it like it was something alive. A week later, I quit. I didn't give 2 weeks. I didn't pick up my last paycheck. 3 months after that, an article popped up on my phone. Local hiker found dead near Moosic Mountain, body mauled beyond recognition. The police were investigating unusual ritualistic elements. They never found the culprit. Sometimes when I drive past that Wendy's, bright red sign glowing like nothing bad ever touched it, I slow down without meaning to. The new staff don't know my face. They don't know what happened. But I swear the grease-heavy smell drifting from the vents brings me back to that night in an instant. And every now and then, when the streetlights flicker just right, I look to the far corner of the lot, where the shadows thicken. And I imagine that old SUV sitting there again. Engine off. Window cracked open, waiting. Story 4. I still remember the night humidity clinging to my skin the way guilt clings to memory. Back in 2019, before everything in my life fell apart, I was just trying to start over. My name's Ryan Matthews, and that summer I'd moved to a quiet Midwest town called Brookside, Indiana, hoping to leave my problems in Chicago behind. But trouble follows people like me. I had blown through my savings after a messy breakup. My car engine died right on I-65, and rent for my tiny studio apartment was already overdue. So when the Burger King off Lincoln Avenue called me in for an overnight shift job, I didn't argue. I didn't negotiate. I just said yes. I needed money. I needed something to feel stable again. The first thing I noticed wasn't the smell of old fryer oil, though it was everywhere, but the silence. The building was big, but somehow felt small, like the walls leaned in a little too close. My manager, Frank Delaney, met me at the door. He was in his early 40s, tall, kind eyes, and a voice that sounded permanently tired. "Ryan, right?" he asked, handing me an apron. "Yeah, thanks for calling me in." He gave a small smile. "Trust me, we're grateful to have anyone willing to take overnights. Not everyone can handle this place after midnight." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Behind him, near the walk-in freezer, stood Michelle, a quiet single mom who'd been there 7 years. And on the grill was Trey, 19 years old, always wearing headphones around his neck, even when they weren't plugged in. Michelle nodded at me. Trey raised 2 fingers in a lazy peace sign. It all felt normal. I needed normal. For the first few nights, it almost was. It was around 1:30 a.m. on my fourth shift when Frank pulled the three of us into the break room. His hands were shaking slightly, though he tried to hide it by adjusting his glasses. "All right," he said quietly. "We need to talk about the freezer issue." Michelle lowered her eyes. Trey pulled off his headphones. "What issue?" I asked. Frank opened a small notebook. "Inventory sheets. We've been losing food during overnights. Not cash, not equipment, just food." "How much?" I asked. He exhaled. "Enough for corporate to start asking questions." Michelle finally spoke. "I told you, someone's coming in after close." Frank rubbed his face. "But the alarms never trip. Cameras don't catch anything. Doors are locked. Windows are sealed." Trey snorted. "Maybe raccoons learned how to use doorknobs." No one laughed. Frank's voice hardened. "We're tightening up procedures. No one leaves early. No one comes in late. And we triple-check the freezer locks." We all agreed, but none of us were really prepared. 3 nights later, I was restocking sauces when I heard something behind the freezer door. A scrape slow. Metal against metal, like someone dragging a pipe across the floor. I froze. "Michelle," I called. She popped her head out from behind the grill. "Yeah? You hear that?" Before she could answer, the scraping sound came again. Longer this time. Trey looked up from the prep table. "Dude, what was that?" Frank walked over, frowning. "Probably the condenser. It's old." But he didn't sound sure. We all stood there listening. Then silence. Frank opened the freezer and checked inside. He walked around the shelves. "Nothing, see? It's fine." But it didn't feel fine. Not at all. 2 mornings later, I arrived early for my shift and found Frank pacing outside the back door. "Someone got in again," he muttered. "What? How?" "No idea, but a full case of patties and 3 bags of fries are gone." I felt goosebumps rise on my arms. Michelle stood near the soda machine, arms crossed tightly, face pale. "It's not someone," she whispered. "It's something." Trey rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on." But then Michelle said something that shut all of us up. "Last night when I was mopping, I heard breathing in the freezer." The room went still. Frank didn't dismiss her. He didn't laugh. He just said very quietly, "I heard it too." Frank decided we needed answers. "Tonight," he said, "we're staying after close, all of us. Lights off. We're gonna catch whoever's doing this." Trey grinned like it was a game. Michelle looked like she wanted to quit on the spot. Me? I felt a knot forming in my stomach. We cleaned early, shut everything down, and huddled in the dining area with the lights off. The only illumination came from the small exit sign glowing faint red against the floor. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., nothing. Trey had started nodding off. I whispered, "Maybe we scared whoever off." Frank whispered back, "Or maybe..." He never finished the sentence, because suddenly, a sound echoed from the back, a soft, dragging shuffle, then another. Then the freezer door creaked. Michelle covered her mouth with her hand. Frank motioned for us to stay low. We crawled behind the counter and peeked over the edge, hearts pounding. What we saw, God, I'll never forget it. The freezer door opened barely 2 inches, just enough for a hand to slip out. A thin, trembling hand, wrongly thin, bone visible under skin, then an arm, then the outline of a head, hair matted and skin grayish, like it hadn't seen the sun in months. The figure crawled out silently on hands and knees, shaking with every movement. Michelle's whole body tensed. Trey stopped breathing. The figure walked toward the prep counter, grabbed a wrapped Whopper we'd left by accident, and tore into it like a starving animal. But the part that chilled my blood, he kept glancing over his shoulder. Not at us, but at the freezer, like he was scared of going back inside. After finishing, he crawled toward the soda machine, pressed his palm against the wall behind it, and slid inside it, right through the drywall, like there was a hidden opening. The wall shifted back into place. Silence returned. Frank whispered, "What the hell was that?" The cops came within 20 minutes. They tore the entire soda machine area apart. and behind the drywall was a narrow tunnel carved roughly between Burger King and the abandoned laundromat next door. The officers climbed through first. We followed. Inside that dark, suffocating space, I saw blankets, half-eaten food, water jugs, torn clothing, a small flashlight, and scratch marks on the floorboards. Someone had been living there or hiding there. The officer holding the flashlight called out, "There's someone further down. 2 people. No, 3. They pulled out 3 individuals, exhausted, terrified, starving, all of them victims of a trafficking operation that used the abandoned building as a holding site. The man we saw had been trying to escape, finding small openings, squeezing through cracks, surviving on whatever food he could steal without being noticed. When they let him out on a stretcher, he looked at me. Eyes hollow, ribs visible, lips trembling. He whispered one thing, "Thank you." I didn't feel like I deserved it. Burger King shut down for renovation. Corporate wanted no publicity. Frank left the job a month later. Michelle took morning shifts at a grocery store. Trey moved out of state for college. And me, I left food service forever. Sometimes when I'm driving late at night and pass a fast food place with its kitchen lights glowing through the darkness, I feel that old chill again. Not because of ghosts, not because of monsters, but because real horror isn't supernatural. It's human, hungry, hiding, desperate, and sometimes it's right behind the walls. Story 5. I never thought a fast food job would change my life, let alone ruin it. But the truth is, I didn't have many choices back in 2021. I was 23, jobless, and 1 month away from getting kicked out of my apartment in Redwater, Arkansas, a small dry town off Highway 92, where the only things that ever stayed open were the gas station, the church, and the Burger King. I'd been laid off from a roofing job after the company downsized. My girlfriend had just moved out. "Tired of my bad luck," she said. The night she left, I sat alone on the floor, staring at the eviction notice taped to the door. The next morning, desperate and sleepless, I walked into the Burger King across from the abandoned Walmart. A handwritten sign taped to the door said, "Now hiring night shift." Apply inside, the restaurant looked tired. Yellowed tiles, flickering menu screens, a drive-through speaker that crackled every time someone ordered. The air smelled like burnt grease and microwave bacon. Behind the counter stood a tall man with graying hair and a sunken face. His name tag read, "Rick, Manager." He didn't smile, didn't blink much either. "You here for night shift?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I really need the job." He studied me like he was trying to see through my skin. "You sure?" he asked quietly. "Most people don't last." I forced a laugh. "I've worked roofing in August. I can handle anything." He didn't laugh back. "Fill this out," he said, sliding an application toward me. "And if you're stupid enough to stay, show up tomorrow at 10 p.m. When I left the store that day, my stomach felt tight. Something about the way Rick looked at me, like he was relieved and scared at the same time, stuck with me, but I pushed it away. Money was money. The next night, I showed up in a clean shirt, trying to look like I had my life together. The parking lot was empty except for an old blue Chevy, probably Rick's inside. The store was quiet. The only sound was the low hum of the fryers and the soda machine dripping syrup onto its tray. Rick walked out from the back. His eyes looked even more hollow than before. "You're early," he said. "Good." He tossed me an apron. "Your job is simple. Clean, prep for morning crew, and keep the fryers running. We close the dining room at midnight, but drive-through stays open. You'll be alone from 11:30 until 5 a.m. "Alone?" I asked. "Yeah, night shift is cheap. Corporate likes saving money." He led me to the kitchen and pointed to a steel door in the corner, the walk-in freezer. "You hear anything weird?" he said, lowering his voice. "Don't open that ever." I frowned. Weird, like what he avoided my eyes. Pipes settling, old fans. Just ignore it. Before I could ask more, he grabbed his jacket. "I'll see you at sunrise," and then he left. Just like that, I was alone. For the first 2 hours, everything was normal. Boring even. I cleaned trays, restocked sauces, wiped down tables. At 12:45 a.m., A car rolled through the drive-thru. A woman ordered a Whopper and fries. When I handed her the bag, she squinted at me. "You new here?" she asked. "Yeah, first night." She hesitated. "Well, good luck." "Thanks," I said, confused. She leaned closer. "You'll need it." Before I could respond, she drove off fast, as if she regretted saying anything. By 1:30 a.m., the restaurant was empty again. I was sweeping near the freezer when I heard a voice, soft, muffled, like someone standing on the other side of the freezer door. "Help!" I froze. My pulse jumped. I stepped closer. "Hello?" The metal door rattled. "It's cold, please. Open." A chill crawled up my arms. I backed away. "Nope, not doing this." I turned up the radio on my phone, blasting music to drown the sound. For a few minutes it worked. Then, bang! The freezer door shook violently. I dropped my broom. Bang! 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 The steel panel dented outward, as if someone inside was hitting it with their fists. I grabbed my phone and called Rick. He picked up immediately, like he'd been staring at his phone. "What is it?" "The freezer," I whispered harshly. There's something inside." "Did you open it?" "No." His voice sharpened. "Good. Whatever you do, don't answer it. Don't speak to it, and stay away from the door." "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. But he hung up. By 3 a.m., the banging finally stopped. My nerves were shot. I kept glancing at the freezer like it might open on its own. Around 3:30, the bell above the drive-thru dinged. I jumped. A new order popped up on the screen. 1 double Whopper, no onion, 1 Coke paid cash. But there was no car outside the monitor for the drive-thru. Camera showed nothing but an empty lane. Still, the order stayed on the screen. Someone or something was waiting. I leaned toward the window slowly, feeling my chest tighten. "Hello?" I called. Silence. "Is anyone out there?" Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Heavy. I whipped around, nothing but the fryer crackling. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't give it food. Please." My skin went cold. I typed back, "Who are you?" No answer. At 4:12 a.m., the power flickered. The lights dimmed, then glowed a deep, sickly orange, like the bulbs were burning from the inside out. The soda machine hissed violently, spraying syrup on the wall. Then I heard it, the freezer latch clicking. Click, click, click. I backed toward the dining room. The latch snapped open. The freezer door swung outward with a metallic groan. Cold air poured into the kitchen, but it wasn't empty. A shape stood in the doorway, tall, thin. Its skin was pale blue, stretched tight over bones. Frost clung to its shoulders. Ice crystals formed around its eyes like shattered glass. Its lips were cracked. When it spoke, the voice was the same one I'd heard earlier, fragile and broken. "Please, I'm so cold. Help me." I stumbled back. "Stay away from me." It stepped forward, leaving wet footprints on the tile. "I'm just hungry." "What are you?" I choked. Its head twitched like it didn't understand the question. "I was left here, locked in, so hungry." I shook my head. "No, no way." It pointed a shaking finger toward the fryers. "Feed me." That's when I saw its wrists, deep marks as if someone had tried to bind it. And on its shirt, faded and torn, was a logo. Burger King Crew. 1984. My stomach dropped. "You used to work here?" Its eyes, cloudy and unfocused, narrowed. "They left me in the cold, behind the boxes, forgot to check." It inhaled sharply. I waited, and I'm still hungry. I turned and ran as I sprinted toward the front entrance. The doors unlocked with a loud click. Someone rushed in. Rick. He looked terrified, sweating, wild-eyed. "Where is it?" he asked. Before I could answer, the creature stepped into view behind me. Rick cursed under his breath. "Damn it. Not again." "You knew about this," I yelled. "What the hell is it?" Rick didn't take his eyes off the creature. He was a worker before my time. They left him locked in the freezer during a winter storm. Pipes froze. Door jammed. By the time they found him, he was changed. Changed into what? Rick's jaw tightened. A thing that never stops being cold and never stops being hungry. The creature's mouth stretched open, wider than humanly possible. A deep growling whisper escaped. Feed me. Rick grabbed my arm. We can't let it touch you. If it touches warm skin. The creature lunged. Rick shoved me aside and took the hit. Its icy hands clamped around his ribs. Rick screamed, a horrible, piercing sound, as frost spread across his chest. Go! He shouted. Run! But I didn't move. I couldn't leave him. I grabbed a metal tray and swung it at the creature's head. It staggered. Rick collapsed, gasping. His skin had turned blue. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have warned you. Earlier. Then he went still. The creature turned toward me. You're warm. I grabbed the nearest thing, a bag of frozen fries, and hurled it at the creature. It caught the bag midair, tearing it open, shoving fistfuls of frozen fries into its mouth like an animal. As it fed, I ran. I raced out the back door, sprinting across the parking lot. My breath felt like fire in my lungs. Behind me, the creature let out a howl, low and guttural, echoing across the empty street. I didn't stop running until I reached the gas station half a mile away. The clerk saw my face and froze. Jesus, man, he said. What happened to you? I looked back toward the Burger King. The windows were dark, silent, but I knew it wasn't over. By morning, police had blocked off the restaurant. They said they found Rick's body in the freezer, a tragic refrigeration accident, they called it. No mention of the creature, no mention of the footprints. The regional manager told the news cameras, Burger King is committed to safety. This was a one-time tragedy, but that was a lie. I know it. I moved to Texas 3 months later, but some nights when the air is cold enough, I swear I hear that voice again. Help. So hungry. And last week I saw something that made my blood run cold. Driving on Highway 92, I passed the old Burger King. They were tearing it down, and standing behind the construction fence was someone tall, thin, covered in frost, watching me, waiting. Story 6, I never planned on working at a Burger King, but when life keeps hitting you, you take whatever doesn't knock you down. Back in 2021, I was 18, freshly graduated from Briar Creek High in Ridgeport, Kansas, and trying to keep my family afloat after my dad passed away from a heart attack 6 months earlier. My mom worked nights at a warehouse. My little sister was only 11, and bills kept coming like clockwork, never late, unlike our paychecks. One evening, when the power had just been disconnected again, Mom broke down crying at the kitchen table. I could tell she was trying to be quiet so my sister wouldn't hear, but in a house that small, nothing stayed private. I put my hand on her shoulder. Mom, I'll get a job, a real one. I'll help, I promise. The next morning I applied at the Burger King off Route 8, the one with the flickering neon sign that locals joked was haunted because it buzzed at night like it whispered secrets I didn't care. They were hiring, and we needed money. The manager, Donna, hired me on the spot. You're young, you look like you'll actually show up, and that's all the qualification I need, she said, sliding a uniform across the counter. My first day smelled like fryer oil and burnt buns. My co-workers were a mixed bag. Reed, a sarcastic 22-year-old who worked the grill like it owed him money, Jasmine. A soft-spoken girl who smiled through everything, even rude customers. Miguel, the closer who walked everywhere like he was already late, Donna. Our stressed-out, chain-smoking manager who pretended she didn't care, but absolutely did. For 3 quiet months, the job was the same every night. Wipe, mop, sweep, bag food, clean up drunk customers' messes. Nothing scary, nothing special, until the man in the broken crown appeared. It was a stormy Thursday. We were closing early because half the county had lost power. The sky was greenish and churning, and the wind screamed through the gaps in the drive-through window. I was dumping trash behind the store when I felt it. Someone watching me, I turned. A man was standing at the edge of the parking lot beside the busted menu board. Tall, thin, wearing a torn black jacket and jeans that looked soaked. But what hit me hardest was the Burger King paper crown on his head, broken down the middle, sagging like it had been crushed. He wasn't moving, not blinking, just staring. Lightning flashed, and for a split second I saw his face clearly. Not angry, not sad, just empty. Like he didn't have a soul behind his eyes. My voice came out shaky. We're closed, man." He didn't respond. He only raised his hand and pointed, slowly, at the back door behind me. I backed up. Nope, not happening. When Reed came out to help me with the trash, the man stepped behind the menu board and vanished like he'd never been there. I tried to shrug it off when we locked up. We joked on the walk to our cars. "Probably some drunk idiot," Reed said. "Or someone high as hell." "Yeah, maybe." But I couldn't stop replaying his stare. The next evening, he came back. The dinner rush had died down, and we were doing our final clean. I was wiping down the drink station when Jasmine froze mid-step. Do you see that?" I followed her gaze. The man was standing directly outside the window, closer this time, so close his breath fogged the glass. The broken crown sat crooked on his head, and his lips curled into a smile that didn't belong on a living person. Donna stormed over. "Who the hell?" She stopped cold. His mouth stretched wider, and he tapped the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. Then, without breaking eye contact, he lifted his hand and made a gesture like he was turning a key in a lock. Donna whispered, "Everybody away from the door." Miguel grabbed a broom. Jasmine hid behind the counter. Donna dialed the police. But before she could speak, the man stepped backward into the dark and disappeared again. I begged Donna to switch my shift. She refused. "We can't let one creep shut down the store. We stay open. Police will patrol the area tonight." I didn't argue, but my stomach churned all afternoon. At 9:50 p.m., the rain started again. At 10:02 p.m., we locked the doors. Business was slow anyway. Reed was cleaning the grill, Jasmine was organizing the sauce packets, and I was mopping the entryway. That's when the power flickered, then died. "Backup generator will kick in," Donna muttered. But it didn't. For a moment, the entire restaurant was pitch black. Then something hit the door. Hard. I jumped back, heart hammering. Jasmine whispered, "He's here! He's here! Oh, God!" Lightning cracked. For 1 second, the dim sky lit up the parking lot, and I saw him. He was standing on the roof, his silhouette sharp against the storm, one hand gripping the metal edge, the broken crown barely holding on. He tilted his head at an unnatural angle, like a puppet with its strings cut. Donna whispered, "Everyone into the walk-in freezer. Now!" But before we could move, footsteps hit the roof, fast, running. Then the back door rattled. Something was trying to open it. Reed braced the broom against the handle. "He can't break in. Metal door." A loud clang echoed as something slammed against it. Again and again. Jasmine was crying. "Why us? Why is he doing this?" Reed whispered. "This has to be some psycho. Just breathe." Donna turned to me. "Grab your phone. Call 911. I dialed. No signal, no service, nothing. The storm was killing everything. Then, silence. Total silence. Even the rain seemed to stop. We stood frozen. A scraping sound drifted from above us. Then a soft thump in the ceiling tiles. Reed looked up. No. He's inside the vents." Donna whispered, "Everyone to the office now." We sprinted. The office was small, barely big enough for a desk and a filing cabinet. Donna slammed the metal door shut and locked it. Reed moved a chair in front of it. "This will hold, right? Right?" Nobody answered. Something crawled overhead, slow, dragging, a body sliding through metal ducts. Then, a voice right above us, a whisper that didn't sound human anymore. "You forgot to lock the door." Jasmine sobbed. "We did. Well, we locked everything." The vent grate above the desk shook violently. Donna screamed, "Move!" We dove aside as the vent snapped loose, and a pair of pale hands reached through the metal, searching blindly. I grabbed the only thing near me, a metal stapler, and slammed it against the fingers. The intruder yanked his hand back, shrieking in a voice that tore through my ears. Donna shouted, "Run to the freezer! Go!" We sprinted out of the office, feet slamming on tile, adrenaline flooding my veins. The vents above rattled as something crawled fast, following us. We reached the walk-in freezer and shoved ourselves inside. Donna pulled the heavy door shut. Darkness, cold, silence. We listened, holding our breath, waiting. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, walking right outside the freezer door. He stopped. His voice seeped through the steel. "One of you dropped something." Reed whispered, "He's insane. He's insane." The footsteps faded. For 10 long minutes, we didn't move. Then sirens, police. We burst out of the freezer. The back door stood open. Rain blew in. Mud tracks led into the woods. The man with the broken crown was gone. They searched for days. Drones, dogs, officers combing the tree line. Nothing. They never found him. Donna quit a week later. Reed transferred to another town. Jasmine refused to work nights again. I stayed a little longer, until the nightmares got too real. The last night I worked, I found something shoved under the drive-through window, a Burger King paper crown, broken down the middle, with a smudge of dried mud on the inside. I quit the next morning. Now, even years later, anytime I pass a Burger King, I feel my chest tighten. I see that crooked crown, that empty stare, that smile, and I still hear his voice in my head, soft, cold, certain. "You forgot to lock the door."